Good morning. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and friends from around the globe. It is my great honor to welcome you all to the last day of the World Congress on Innovation and Technology, WCIT/DigiTec 2024. Today, we gather in Armenia, a country that has endured millennia of transformations from natural upheavals to the rise and fall of technological eras. As artificial intelligence rapidly advances, reshaping industries, economies, and societies, we find ourselves at a new crossroads. The benefits of AI are huge, but so too are the risks. The choices we make about its development and deployment will shape our future. It can elevate us to extraordinary heights or lead us into the unknown. The choice is ours. It is in our hands to ensure that AI becomes a tool for the betterment of humanity, a force for good that amplifies our compassion, creativity, and ingenuity. Today, Armenia is set to play a pivotal role, leading humanity on the journey of exploring the potential of AI beyond the limits, but within ethics. On the final day of WCIT/DigiTec 2024, let us bring together everything we've learned, discussed, and questioned. Let's not only celebrate the advancements, but challenge ourselves to address the unresolved issues. How do we make sure that AI remains a tool for collective good? How do we prioritize ethical frameworks while pushing the boundaries of innovation? And most importantly, how do we create a future where AI elevates humanity rather than undermines it? Today's discussions will push these ideas even further. We will discuss the critical need for clear frameworks that ensure AI development aligns with societal values while maintaining innovation and addressing security concerns. Women bring unique perspectives, experiences, and problem-solving approaches that can contribute to developing more inclusive and innovative AI solutions. In our conference today, we'll explore the role of female leaders in the AI industry and discuss the importance of diversity in leadership to drive innovation and ensure inclusivity in AI development. I'm excited to hear from our esteemed speakers as they share their insights. Let's engage in discussions, share our thoughts, and build lasting connections to make the final day of this conference memorable. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for an exciting panel discussion on balancing transparency, regulation, and security in AI governance, moderated by Cybersecurity Officer and Specialist Jasmine Woolley. Let's welcome our panelists. Mr. Arvid Bell, CEO of the Negotiation Task Force. Mr. Vasily Pisarev, Head of Products and Analytics at Team Telecom Armenia. Mr. Edwin Zargarian, founder and CEO of Cryptmoji and Erebus. Ms. Adelaida Bagdasarian, LLM Program Chair, American University of Armenia. Mr. Oleg Petrov, Senior Digital Transformation Specialist at the World Bank. And Mr. Levon Hovannisian, co-founder and CTO at Sephora. Welcome.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to one of the last panels hosted here at the World Congress of Innovation and Technology. I'm honoured to be your moderator for today's panel discussion on AI governance, balancing transparency, regulation, and security. Today, we're going to explore the privacy issues of AI, how companies can balance AI with traditional security measures, and the governance of AI. Thank you to the panellists for all being here today. I'm sure everyone's really excited to hear your insights. I'd like to begin by asking the entire panel the following question. We know there is a complex interplay between tech companies, governments, and civil society. Is there a way that stakeholders can find the balance between innovation and regulation? Levon, I would like to start with you.
Innovation moves always faster than regulations do, and our industry needs are in favor of innovation to move faster, right? But again, if we remember about safety measures and regulation, the only known to me technique that worked always is regulatory sandboxing, when regulatory keeping an eye on industry evolving faster, but at the same time don't stopping innovations to happen. And yesterday our friend Hrant Khachaturian said one thing, funny thing, which quickly became a kind of joke in our community. He said, AI was born in California, will die in EU. Yeah, and well, this is funny, but this might become true, because in one place we have good proper usage of this regulatory sandboxing, and other end we have only strict regulatory measures that stops evolution of technologies.
Adelaide, I'd like to go to you.
Well, as a lawyer, let me probably disagree a little bit with my colleague panelist. So yeah, balancing between different questions and fundamental rights of human fundamental rights and technology development has not been an easy task. The vivid example is the adoption of the EU AI Act, which was negotiated for a long while until it got adopted just recently. And the policymakers in the EU, they have taken one core principle and put it as a fundament for the law itself, and that principle is fundamental human rights, respect of human rights. So I think this is one thing that all of the stakeholders would agree, most likely, that protection of human rights is indeed fundamental for any development. At the same time, I would like to mention that the law itself excludes research and development from its applications, which means that the law specifically is designed to foster innovation and science in that sense. However, once the science hits the market, then it has to comply with the regulation. So basically, if I put it in a more simple term, for the GDPR context, we know there is this principle of privacy by design. In this EU AI Act context, it will be human rights protection by design. And the scientists and the developers will have to think on the innovation and development coming from the ethical and human rights protection considerations ground up. And I guess this is important. This law has been also supported by the recent adoption, or better say signing, of the Council of Europe Framework Convention on AI, which is the first international instrument on AI. And basically it confirms that human rights, rule of law, democratic values are the core values that should be protected in any sense, and in technology and AI, and the states have to commit to protect this.
Thank you. We'll just keep it going down the line, I think.
Sure. piggybacking up what you said, I think the regulatory is always one step behind the innovation. You look at social media and then the privacy of consumers, their personal lives, and you have big data that's analyzing the shopping habits and their own business with purchasing habits. And then now you have AI that's basically everything. So I think what needs to happen is the businesses have to start, the only thing the regulatory bodies really are interested in is to protect consumer rights, right? So if businesses are able to integrate how they handle customer data, you're gonna get a yin-yang situation of being able to use that information but also protect it. It would actually be the way to go forward on that.
Vasily?
Hello. As for me, I am from the private sector, and for us, the main balance in between the innovation and the commerce result. So we need to have this balance and figure out the stage and the maturity of the technology to involve this in the daily life, in the business. And this pretty tough to find this balance. Sometimes you may be too early because we are not, IT company who is innovate something in the root of the AI, but we need to have it on the shelves, I would say. So this is our main goal, is to find this kind of balance, and we will stay on the balance you will find in the regulatory, in the security, and all this stuff.
Oleg?
Thank you. I represent the development community, and I think from the development perspective and emerging market developing countries in general, it's very important to get this balance right. It's like cart and the horse. So if you put the regulation as the cart and the innovation like the horse. So if you need to have the horse always ahead of the cart, otherwise the progress will be very slow. So, but you want to make sure that the horse doesn't run away like wild and doesn't, create a lot of damage and wreak havoc around. So you have to have proper safeguards in place to make sure that the AI technologies, innovations serve public good, public interest, and not just a private, private agenda. So this is where we need cooperation between different stakeholders, including international community, to work together to get this balance right, so the AI can be leveraged, harnessed most effectively, equitably, and to increase development impact, improve lives, and not just contribute to the profit of specific companies, right? So it's the most fundamental question today in the AI ecosystem globally is to get this balance right. And it's very country-specific, context-specific. Every country will need to do its own consultation, its own thinking to find the right balance. In less mature markets, emerging markets, you need to focus more on innovation because you want to move faster, right? Because there's a huge potential to boost productivity, to improve public services, to improve private sector development. So there are a lot of opportunities out there, and it's especially critical in developing countries, in emerging markets, right? But you still need to keep those safeguards in place, even in developing countries. And this is where the different stakeholders can help. Like private sector, of course, their role is to drive innovation, right? But they also need to provide transparency. Governments need to provide the framework, for both innovation and for regulation. Academia and civil society can provide oversight and keep everybody accountable. So I think it's very important to collaborate, on this issue to get this right. No country can, there's no like cookie cutter approach here. It's super context specific. Armenia will have its own balance, right? Next door, Georgia will have a different balance. It will be very different from other countries. So you need to do your own homework to analyze, what you really want out of this. AI is just a tool. It's like a knife in the hands of a chef, right? you can use it well to cook, to cook food, or you can also use it, to create harm. And it's your responsibility to get it right. Over.
Dr. Bell?
Yes, so the question was, how do you balance these two principles, right? Innovation versus regulation. So my organization is called Negotiation Task Force for a reason, because we look at these problems from a negotiation perspective. And once you do that, you realize that sometimes when you have different stakeholders struggling to solve a problem, sometimes asking about principles, it's not the right approach. It's much more interesting to ask about the interests that drive specific actors and what are the positions or the policies they pursue. So for example, sometimes we have this stereotype, and it gets back to a point that Ed, I think, made during our discussion before this panel. Sometimes we have this stereotype, there are the governments, and then they want regulation, and then there are the companies, and they want innovation, and the real world doesn't really work like this, right? If like my colleague Gayane over there wants to become the Prime Minister of Armenia, she would never say, I'm against innovation, right? I want to regulate everything. Like these cliches, they don't work like this in the real world. So instead, what happens is people have specific interests with regards to specific technologies, right? And then they formulate specific ideas, and maybe they underestimate consequences because they don't understand the subject matter well enough. And so what sometimes we do is for these cases, we suggest you need more formats where you have stakeholders in often not really like high buy-in environments, and more like loose roundtables in cross-sectoral dialogues. You bring them together and you try to tease out what are your underlying concerns, right? We did this, for example, once with investment disputes for a specific case in Central Asia, where you had like private investors, regulators, and you simply bring them together and facilitate a dialogue to understand a little bit more what are the underlying concerns that maybe we are missing, and then you try to go from there. So it's more about negotiating competing interests and seeing how can we balance those, and it's about abstract principles between which you need to find a balance.
It's really fascinating. I'd like to ask you another question to expand on that. Given your work on international conflict management, could you elaborate on how this approach could perhaps be similar to international security negotiations, and what parallels you see between AI governance and global cybersecurity agreement?
Yeah, so here the interesting thing that I'd like us to think about when we think of AI as a new technology is to consider that very often the impact that a transformative technology has on society or on humanity on a larger scale is usually not primarily dictated by the capabilities of the technology, but by the geopolitical environment. So I'll give you like two quick examples. So if I say the word nuclear technology or nuclear power, right? What was the first application of nuclear technology in heavy use? It was the nuclear weapon, right? Used during World War II. And the first nuclear reactor came 10 years later. So that was because that technology had its breakthrough during World War II, right? It is conceivable that in a different time, you would have had a reactor first and then much later the bomb. And in fact, for other transformative technologies, we had that as well. Think like steam engines, for example, largely used peacefully first for decades before it was first used for military purposes. Why? Because that technology was invented when geopolitics overall was largely stable, so 17th, 18th century, and of course the historians in the room will know, I'm not saying there was no war, but overall it was not as bad as World War II, right? And so you had first steam engines for water pumps in mines, and decades later you had the first warship that used the same technology. So if you use this backdrop, an interesting question would be, do we think in this room right now that as we add AI to this world, are we closer in our world, how people interact, how nations are in conflict? Are we closer to the 1940s or these 1800s? What are we closer to? So that would be an interesting question, and maybe people have different opinions. Maybe we would settle on, well, it's probably somewhere in between. Thank God we don't have an all-out war, but we definitely have the war in Ukraine, we have the war in the Middle East, we have the tension between China and United States. So if you add now this transformative technology to that mix, right, you sort of want to put some guardrails on it that shield you from the negative impacts of geopolitical escalation. So for example, you could think of something like arms control around AI. Just like nuclear powers during the Cold War figured out, even though we compete, we have an interest in certain safeguards against arms races, right? Could we do something similar with AI? Could we have some confidence-building measures around the use of AI technology? And I think thinking these topics together, so not just looking at AI as a technology in the abstract, but thinking of it much more as something that is in dialogue with geopolitical circumstances and the way we as humans interact, that's usually an interesting way to then think about, okay, what does it mean for the use and non-use of that technology?
It's really interesting. I'm going to switch pace a little. So we know that there are strict regulations regarding data privacy. How can AI-powered cybersecurity tools balance effective threat detection with compliance? What protocols should be in place to protect sensitive information? Ed, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. I'll keep it less technical, but from a simplistic standpoint, they're two very different things. You can protect customer information by putting into the customer's hand encrypted data, put it into their system, use it accordingly, and then get rid of it. Or in cybersecurity for AI, using AI for cybersecurity inside of the network for breaches, analytics, and things like that. As long as you protect the customer data and you're able to segment it out from network security, it's very easy to do with the right tools, that is.
Oleg?
Yeah, it's another example of how you need to balance, the two objectives, privacy and cybersecurity. So it's not easy, but it's possible, and it's important to follow the privacy by design approach, aligning with GDPR, European Union framework, which will help to ensure that data privacy protection plays, and to ensure that cybersecurity tools are privacy friendly, you need to use so-called privacy-enhancing technologies. So I think one good example is end-to-end encryption. So this is a very powerful tool. Also, you need to do data anonymization. So there is a limited minimal amount of sensitive personal data involved, and as much data should be anonymized as possible. So I think that will also help. And also as little sensitive data should be collected as possible. Data minimization principle. So I think if you follow this principle, use these techniques, then you can balance between the privacy and security considerations.
Levin, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, from data privacy, especially personal data privacy perspective, so we always have this issue of collecting more data than it's needed in reality. All the services these days, they collect as much as they can or as much as they are allowed to collect. And this raises major privacy issues from normal users' perspective, right? And normal standard cybersecurity measures, right? They might not work in this case. And we have also data ownership, especially personal data ownership problem. Because when you chat with AI, when you ask AI something or you upload your photo to the AI servers to edit something, there is a question. Who owns that data? Me? How I own that data, that photo? It is already uploaded to that server and I don't know. And we cannot know, right? So it's not regulated enough and not evolved enough to have clear distinction who owns the data and how it is protected. And from technological perspective, transport security, data storage security, those are more or less simple things to do with traditional techniques. But we have this ideological new aspect of cybersecurity in this matter. So we have to think about it more, and I think this is the most complicated thing in terms of cybersecurity and data privacy. And yeah, there are techniques like data minimization and anonymization, but apparently we see that everything, all the cool products these days based on AI, they work on specific personal data, right? So these two things are not living together at the same time.